Last spring, I was standing in my garden looking at a row of stunted, yellowing peppers, and then I looked at my Amish neighbor's garden just across the fence line. The contrast was vivid. My plants looked like they were struggling for every breath, while his were deep, waxy green, already heavy with fruit, and he hadn't spent a dime on those colorful bags of fertilizer I'd been hauling from the trunk of my car all month. You know what finally made me rethink everything I thought I knew about feeding a garden? It was seeing that neighbor, Levi, out there with nothing but a pitchfork and a weathered wooden wagon, outperforming my high-tech approach with what looked like literal dirt. I'd spent 27 years trying to buy my way to a better harvest, thinking that more nitrogen in a blue crystal form was the answer. But seeing his soil that felt like chocolate cake and smelled like the woods after a rain, made me realize I was missing the foundation. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how they build that kind of fertility from scratch and how you can start using it in your own backyard. And stick around to the end because I'll share a specific liquid manure tea recipe that acts like a natural growth rocket for your heavy feeders. I'll be honest, my old way worked fine for a long time. I'd go to the big box store, grab the October 10th tin, and sprinkle it around. My plants grew, sure, but I noticed that every year I needed a little bit more of it. My soil was becoming hard, crusty, and almost lifeless between the plants. I was treating my garden like a patient on a 4-drip instead of a living organism. When I started spending more time visiting Mennonite farms in northern Lancaster County, I began to see a different philosophy at play. They call it stewardship, or being a good caretaker of the earth. To them, the soil isn't just a medium to hold the plant up. It's a closed-loop system. They aren't trying to feed the plant. They're feeding the life inside the soil that, in turn, feeds the plant. It's a subtle shift in thinking, but it changes everything about how you spend your Saturday mornings. Now, here's where the science actually backs them up. Modern soil biology calls this the soil food web. When we dump synthetic salts on our beds, we actually dehydrate the beneficial microbes and earthworms that do the hard work for us. The Amish have known this for centuries, not because they read it in a lab report, but because they watched the health of their livestock and their families depend on the quality of that dirt. The first thing Amish gardeners understand is that fertility isn't an event you do once a year. It's a continuous cycle that starts with brown gold. Now, most of us think of composting as a bin in the corner where we throw kitchen scraps. But for an Amish family, the compost pile is the heart of the farm. I watched an Amish neighbor, Eli, building what he called his cake. He wasn't just tossing things in a heap. He was layering 3 parts browns, usually old wheat straw or shredded corn stalks, with 1 part greens, which was mostly manure from his goats and rabbits mixed with kitchen scraps. He made sure that pile was at least 4 feet tall and 4 feet wide. This size is crucial because it allows the center to reach about 140 degrees, which kills off weed seeds and pathogens. If you're in zones 3 through 5, you want to start this pile in late summer so it is time to break down before the ground freezes solid. I started doing this myself, and within 2 seasons, the texture of my clay soil changed from something you could break a shovel on to something I could crumble with my bare hands. This next step is where things really start to look different from a conventional garden, and it involves what they call green manure. Most of us leave our garden beds bare over the winter, which is like leaving your skin out in the sun without a shirt. It gets parched and loses its nutrients. My Mennonite friends use cover crops like crimson clover or winter rye. They sow these as soon as a summer crop comes out. For those of you in zones 6 and 7, getting clover in the ground by mid-September ensures you have a thick carpet that holds nitrogen in the soil. The clover actually takes nitrogen from the air and fixes it into little nodules on the roots. In the spring, instead of tilling in with a gas power machine, they often use a broad fork to just loosen the soil and let the green material rot right on top or just under the surface. This is part of that system I mentioned. The cover crop protects the soil from erosion, feeds the worms over winter, and then becomes the fertilizer for your spring peas. This isn't a standalone trick. It's one piece of a system, and the system is what makes the difference. Now, I want to be straight with you about something. I used to think that the more stuff I added, the better. But the Amish approach is actually about restraint. This next piece is one that I completely overlooked for most of my gardening life, and it's the use of crushed eggshells and wood ash. I remember sitting in a kitchen in Intercourse, Pennsylvania, watching a friend's grandmother meticulously dry her eggshells on the back of the wood stove. She'd crush them into a fine powder and sprinkle just a tablespoon into the hole, whenever she planted a tomato. If you're in zones 8 and 9, where the soil can stay quite warm and biological activity is high, these minerals get processed quickly. The eggshells provide calcium, which prevents blossom end rot, and the wood ash, used very sparingly, maybe a handful per 10 square feet, provides potassium and helps balance the acidity of the soil. I'll be honest with you, I used to just throw my wood ash away, but once I started using it like vitamin dust for my peppers and leeks, the stems grew twice as thick. If you're picking up what I'm putting down and you want more of these deep dives into how Amish families approach the garden, hit subscribe. I've got a lot more of these coming. Now let's keep going. One of the parts that surprised me the most was how they handle mulch. In a conventional garden, we buy those bags of dyed wood chips that honestly don't do much for the soil. Amish gardeners use spoiled hay or straw, and they lay it on thick, at least 4 to 6 inches. But here's the secret. They wait until the soil has fully warmed up in late May or early June. If you put it down too early, you trap the cold in the ground and stunt your heat-loving plants like melons. I did this myself for years, wondering why my cantaloupes were sitting still for 3 weeks. Now I wait, and the result is a massive explosion of growth. The straw keeps the moisture in, but as the bottom layer rots, it feeds the earthworms, who then tunnel down and aerate the soil for you. It's a labor-saving method that actually builds long-term wealth in your dirt. Realistic first-year expectations are that you'll see fewer weeds and better moisture retention. By the second and third year, you'll find that you barely need to water at all, even in a dry July. I'd rather you start with honest expectations and be pleasantly surprised as the system matures. I want to talk about some patterns I've noticed that keep folks from getting these kinds of results. I did these myself for years, so no judgment here. The first pattern is the clean garden syndrome. We have this habit of pulling every single dead plant and leaf out of the garden in the fall, leaving it completely bare. In the Amish mindset, that's like throwing away money. Unless the plant was diseased, they leave the roots in the ground to rot and provide organic matter. Another pattern is over-relying on fast food fertilizers. We want that instant green hit, but it's like giving a kid a candy bar. They get a rush and then they crash. The Amish approach is a slow burn energy. It builds a plant with strong cell walls that can actually resist bugs on its own. This ties back to the system. Healthy soil creates a healthy plant, and a healthy plant doesn't need chemical pesticides. We treat the pest as the problem, but the Amish see the pest as a symptom of weak soil. Now, here's something I picked up from an Amish family that I haven't seen mentioned in any gardening guide, and it's what I call the Monday bucket. This is the bonus I teased earlier. Every Monday, they take a 5-gallon bucket, fill it with water, and drop in 2 big handfuls of well-rotted cow or horse manure and a handful of comfort leaves if they have them. They let it sit for exactly a week, stirring it once a day with a stick. By the following Monday, it's a dark, funky-smelling tea. They dilute it until it looks like weak pico tea and pour it right at the base of their heavy feeders. Things like corn, cabbage, and pumpkins. I started using this on my broccoli, which always used to be small and bitter. The difference was night and day. The heads were huge, tight, and sweet. It's such a simple thing, costs nothing but little time, but it provides a liquid boost of microbes and minerals that the plants can take up instantly. That's what I've learned from Amish and Mennonite gardeners about building soil that actually lasts. It's not about the latest product or a fancy gadget. It's about participating in the cycle that's already happening all around us. If you stop trying to control the garden and start trying to serve the soil, the garden will take care of you. If any of this changed how you think about your dirt, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Are you going to try a cover crop this year? Or maybe start your first Monday bucket? Let me know. Hit subscribe if you want more of these deep dives into how traditional communities grow food with methods that have worked for generations. Thanks for spending time with me today. I'll see you in the next one.